I'm Michael. Welcome to Beyond the Screenplay, the podcast where each episode we do a conversational deep dive analysis into a film. Today we are talking about Bugonia, the 2026 film. I guess it came out 2025.
No,
film.
it's 25.
Yeah, sorry. Screenplay by Will Tracy, based on Save the Green Planet by Jong Joon-hwan, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. I'm joined by the Beyond the Screenplay team, Trisha Rand.
Hello, everyone.
Brian Bittner.
Hello.
And Alex Calleros.
Hi.
All right. So
Alex and I shaved our heads for this. What did you guys?
Wow.
Lack of commitment.
We're lacking. We're the Jesse Plemons in this one.
Okay.
This is supposed to look, yeah. I mean, all right, we'll get into it. Before we get into it, just want to say that our episode on Marty Supreme is out over on the Beyond the Screenplay Patreon. So if you want to hear our thoughts on that movie, that's all there. There were many thoughts. It was a good conversation. Weird movie. Speaking of weird movies, Bugonia. So it is written in Beyond the Screenplay lore that our love of the Yorgos Lanthimos movies tends to be like we tend to overlap, right? Poor Things we all loved, and what's the name? Why can't I remember?
The Favorite.
The Favorite was right, like amazing, and we loved it. I skipped Kinds of Kindness because I just somehow through the vibes of the universe knew that it wasn't going to be for me. I know nothing about it, but I still knew that it wasn't going to be for me. But Bugonia, I was curious about, and there's this like, what, Emma Stone and Yorgos, what are they keep coming out, and I saw the trailer and her head shaved and she's covered in the thing. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Brian?
Well, yeah, real quick, I'll say that there's a screenwriter thing we should discuss, which is, or at least touch upon, which is The Lobster and Killing of a Sacred Deer and Kinds of Kindness all have the same screenwriter. Poor Things and The Favorite have the same screenwriter. So those two movies feel like, even though they're very different movies, they feel like they're in concert with each other.
Mm-hmm.
This, Bugonia, is a new screenwriter. Yorgos, I think, came on later as a director.
Mm-hmm.
This is the screenwriter of The Menu, which also is sort of a, almost like bottle episode, insane, like high stakes kind of people could die situation. So I think that even though Yorgos movie feels like a Yorgos movie, there is definitely a writer thing happening here where different writers are going to, be for different audiences.
For sure. Yeah, and I don't think I realized that going into it, and maybe looked it up during, and I think the different screenwriter Yorgos coming in later makes a lot of sense in retrospect, and I do want to talk about that. Overall, I had a really fun time watching this movie. I really didn't know what to expect. I feel like the trailer did a good job of like signaling like the premise, right? High level inciting incident. These two seemingly crazy people kidnap the CEO, played by Emma Stone, shave her hair, and think she's an alien. Then what's going to happen? And this movie is an excellent ride of then what happens.
Mhm.
And so I really enjoyed the filmmaking. The performances are great. I love how it kind of walks this really like delicate line of like, you think they're crazy, but at some point you're like, but she might be an alien. And like, oh, wouldn't that be weird if she was an alien? And then like, she might be an alien. And like, I feel like this movie handles that really, really well. And so to me, this feels like an example of a fun premise and an interesting script that in the wrong hands would have been like, could have been a disaster and not nearly as engaging. But like with this filmmaker and this cast, I feel like it exactly like walks that line of like the exact experience that you would want someone to have on this story. So I'm excited to get into it, but overall, I had a lot of fun with it. Trisha, what about you?
Yeah, I really like this movie. I kind of am, just at this point here for whatever Yorgos Lanthimos wants to give me. Like, I don't know. It was hard for me to think critically about it while I was watching it.
Yeah.
Because the experience of it is so visceral that I was just like kind of holding on as tight as I could while I was watching it and didn't have any time to like, and now here's this structural thing that's happening, or like, oh, what an interesting choice. Like, I had no space for any of that. I was just in it, in this situation, in the tension. And so it's really effective in that way. It's also nice and tight. It's like less than 2 hours long, I want to say, or maybe just at.
It's like just 2 hours, I think.
Yeah, and it feels really nice and tight in a way that a lot of modern films feel a little ropier in a way that I don't like. And so this, just seems like executed, scene, like in a snapshot, like with clarity by Yorgos Lanthimos, and sort of executed in a fever dream, and just is what it is. And I really, really like that. I'm not going to say it's my favorite of his movies. I think the themes here, while they are incredibly relevant, and like, yes, very pointed. I don't think there's any missing the theme here. It's really dark. It's really, really dark. And like the ending just bummed me out.
Why?
Yeah. Which I do want to talk about the ending
Sure.
at some length. But I think that I was like, I don't know if it's particularly, I think all of the interestingness and complexity of it is in kind of the performances and some of the like tension and twists and turns and how it is sort of a slow build, right? And kind of a thematic study. It's not actually really a character study, which I do want to get back to also, but like it is kind of this thematic study and this, social commentary. And there's not actually a lot of like arguing of the theme per se. The theme is very, very straight ahead in its environmental message. Like the movie is very allegorical. It's extremely legible, in my opinion, on an allegorical level. And so I just kind of was like, yeah, this is really impressive, but it doesn't exactly like warm my heart. Or and it's not as fun or something like The Favorite or Poor Things, right? It's overall it's funny, but it's darker, it's less playful, and feels like it just concludes in the most awful way. So, that's me and Bugonia.
Nice. Yeah, I want to get into that because I feel like your statement of like I had no space for like thinking critically about this was very much my experience, and I think I'm realize even as we're beginning this conversation, like I don't know that I've really thought at all about the theme or like what it meant or was the ending dark or not because of just the experience and the ride that it took me on. I was so caught up in that. So I'm excited to talk about that more. Alex, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I saw this back when it was in theaters, and it was one of those great theater experiences, as you get always with a Yorgos film, because it is going to just envelop you with sound and intensity and strange performances and all that. And it was, you were talking about how it feels dark, and I think, One Battle After Another was also in our kind of cultural milieu. It was very much engaged with the now. And this movie almost felt even more so in like a icky, like kind of my stomach feels sick way, which I think is just very impressive and just shows like the writer, the actors, everybody understands the assignment here, which is we're plumbing the kind of darkness of this internet reality bubble world that we are all living in right now. And through these characters and through even kind of the fever dream of the movie itself, it feels like it is capturing how reality feels sometimes right now in a way that's a little too close to home, a little too real, a little too sad and dark. And I think that's probably what you're tapping into, Trisha, is just, it's too real. Oh God, like this is too much what is happening. But I love it for that. And I love movies that can use all elements of the form of cinema to get at a feeling that is hard to kind of put into words or to even talk about, but just like put you in a mind state of like, oh yeah, that's what this is. That's what this feels like. And I feel like that's what this movie's doing in just kind of a subtle background way. And then the foreground on the surface story is also really compelling and the characters are incredibly compelling. So I love a movie that can work on both those levels, where it's both creating an experience through the form of cinema that taps on a cellular level to a thing that is not like literal, but it's just like the thing we're living in. And then on top of that, give me that ending, which is so much fun. As soon as she was like getting out of the ambulance, I was like, oh my God, they're doing it. They're gonna do it. Yes. It's that thing I always talk about where a lot of my favorite movies, they've already given me what I paid for. Like I got the movie I wanted from this movie. Wait, there's more? And that's always, and when we're up in the spaceship and then she starts speaking in the language and it just sounds so perfect. There's stupid costumes. I love you, Yorgos. This is amazing. So it was a movie that gave me more than I bargained for, which I always love. But yeah, it did make me feel kind of sick. And I think that was the intention.
Yeah.
Starting to wonder if I saw the movie wrong. I had so much fun in this movie. I didn't feel sick or dark at all. Brian, yeah, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was going to say, like, my two favorite movies of the year right now are 28 Years Later and Bugonia. So it's like, I'm just a sick person, clearly. I'm like, offended by movies that are just like, normal. But yeah, no, this movie, like, we kind of talked about this with One Battle After Another, which is a movie where the ride is so enjoyable that just the entertainment value as like a piece of cinema is very enjoyable to me. And then there's a pretty clear theme at the surface, and then there's just like a lot of stuff below it that you can kind of pick at and think about longer. It's not, because if the theme is too clear and the sort of message is too clear and there's no room for kind of metaphor and questions and stuff, then it becomes old really quick. And this movie is not super complicated in its thematic conversation, but there are things that are fun to pick at, and that's what I love. Is like, so I saw this in the theater and then rewatched it before, tonight actually, and it's just the kind of movie where it's like, if I just want to sit down and watch a movie that I enjoy watching, this is great. If I want to sit down and like actually dig into it a little bit and kind of ask some questions that I don't have fully answered, this is great. If I want to sit down and have something that feels pretty clear and I don't have to think about it too much, but then it feels pretty, it's just those are the things, those are like all the ingredients that I want for just like a really good time in a movie that I'm just definitely going to love. And yeah, I just have a lot of thoughts, but also just as you kind of said, as you guys all said, there's an enjoyment to just enjoying it, of just being like, I'm on this ride, I'm having a good time, and then at the same time there is a feeling that I am, unlike some of Yorgos' stuff, like Kinds of Kindness this is kind of like one of the short films of Kinds of Kindness as a movie is kind of the way that people were talking about it, which I think is not wrong. But I feel like all of the shorts in Kinds of Kindness, I'm kind of going, yeah, but why does this? But like, like just very frustrating, like dense thematic just stuff, and I like that this feels very simple in what it's doing, while also, like I said, having a lot beneath the surface.
Today I
said really
learned that
quick, you mentioned the different ways of watching it, and it was a movie that I found very rewatchable because of that ending, and it was really fun to watch the movie through the lens of, oh no, she's definitely an alien.
Right.
And even one of the first shots of her is her brushing her teeth, and it can be read both ways. It's like, CEOs are psychopaths, so she's brushing her teeth in this very strange, like tentative way, or yeah, she's an alien who's like doing human things, like trying them out. And it's just, I love movies that it works completely perfectly on both levels. And even her behavior in the office and stuff could be read as she's not really human. Also, if you're in the C-suite, you're not really human, maybe. So it's one of those movies that is so, I love when you can interpret every scene in a different way and it works.
Right. And I think that's the trick with movies like this, is that like they have to work both ways. I think Sixth Sense is maybe one of the best examples we have in all of cinema of like you can read so many scenes two different ways in that movie. But I had I had Trisha's voice in my head being like, we can't see the villain by themselves like pretending to not be a villain, essentially, And the only thought I had rewatching it was her in the car, like singing along to Chapel Roan, and whatever. But then I was like, no, that's like she makes it clear through the course. She's like, oh, I've been here long enough that I've just kind of gotten used to it and just sort of become whatever, And
Andromedon's like Chapel Roan.
Right, exactly. That's
like,
the
why
thing is
not?
that it's like we have no indication that she wouldn't be in a car singing along to the music, but based on whatever, that's what I mean. So I think that stuff all works, and I think even allegorically, like this movie is either about a CEO who's responsible for like some deaths and whatever, or it's about an alien who is responsible for the fate of the world, and it works both ways. So it's like everything this movie is trying to talk about. I was so happy to have the feeling at the end that I didn't care which ending it was, even if it was she goes in the closet and like we cut to credits. I was like, that's fine with me too. Like I was kind of just happy that the movie had done the work where both endings made sense, as opposed to when you have that like pit in your stomach feeling of like, oh God, they did this thing and then they just changed their minds, Game of Thrones, to just do this other thing, and Rise of Skywalker, and just like, what if we did this? Wouldn't that be crazy? It's like, no, this movie did the work to earn whatever ending it wanted to do.
Yeah. I think that's probably the most impressive thing to me about it from a writing standpoint is, as you guys are saying, it works on all the levels at once without them like fighting each other. Like I think, like you were saying, Alex, it can just be watched as a fun thriller, like, captive. Is she going to escape? Oh no, the police are at the door. Like all those like fun kind of genre beats are in there and work on that level. It can be read through a more like, allegorical statement about, culture angle. And then, with the alien also, there's like a twist, it's an alien. And like whatever pair of glasses you're putting on to view the movie in, like they're all like fun. We talked about Marty Supreme and how that in some ways has multiple movies in it, but in a way that sort of fighting
each other.
Yeah. And so I really like that about this movie. I'm curious to have to talk about performances, and I want to kind of talk about the control of information too. But to dive into this thematic aspect of it, what are like you guys reading? What parts of this read is like really dark to you, Trisha?
Oh, I mean, I think the ending really comes around to like humankind and its like violence and destructive nature. I think it's really interesting that so and of course capitalism, which is what's destroying the planet. But she's the CEO of this company, but actually Teddy works for her. Like we come to find out that this warehouse where he's boxing stuff up, he actually works for her. And so he's a part of the corporate machine, even while he's trying to fight it, right? And the way that he is fighting it is like there is no way to fight it except this inherently violent approach that he's taken, which is he's become a serial killer. We find out, and he's caught 2 Andromedas in the however many number of people that he's killed. It was that scene where I knew she was an alien. I was like, she's not running away. Like, so she's doing something else here, clearly. But I think that, ultimately, it's this very, like, I want to say pointed, but really what I mean is scolding, toward humanity and all of the violent systems that we've created, including capitalism, which is violent, which are destroying the planet. And the message seemingly at the end of the movie is the only way to save the planet is to kill all the people. And it's interesting in that closing montage, like to be clear, I don't think that Yorgos Lanthimos is suggesting that we kill all the people. I'm not saying that at all. Like that's the solution to the climate crisis. I don't think. That's what the filmmaker is trying to communicate here. But it's just this really bleak look, right, at humankind and our inherent ways of destruction. And so I think it's really interesting how many of the people, the dead people that we see in the final montage are workers, right? It's almost all people laboring for capitalism, for profit, for these CEOs, like the Emma Stone character, and they're dead mostly in their workplaces. You know, we see a few people in like apartments or restaurants or other places like that. But again, it's mostly commerce, it's mostly labor, it's mostly these engines that are keeping the system running. And I just, the worker bees, really. And the metaphor with the hive is there and the queen, and it's the colony collapse disorder, and it's all very legible, it feels like, as a symbol, as an allegory. And it's so hopeless. Like, the filmmaker, and at no point does the text of the movie suggest another way, right? Like, there's this very extremist view that is violent, that is the Jesse Plemons character who thinks that he's outside of the system but isn't, and is just enacting violence in like sort of an Ouroboros way, right? But then there's total destruction of humankind, and nothing in between. And maybe that's a commentary on the internet and social media and the ways that we're shouting at each other. And how it, has so polarized the world that these are the only two sides that are left, the people who are profiting and the people who are being exploited, who want to violently rise up. But there's nothing in the middle.
Right.
And like, I was so hopeful for the Dawn character. I was like, maybe Dawn's nope, not gonna make it. Not gonna make it out. Sweet, impressionable Dawn. And so I'm just like, I don't know. There's nothing fun about it to me for that reason. The performances are fun. The text is fun. Like, the dialogue is fun to watch the performers do it. But thematically, just a bummer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To be clear, I laugh a lot watching this movie.
Me
I think
too.
It's hilarious in a lot of ways, and I mean, even just I love Yorgos's sensibilities, the way he shoots Emma Stone, like walking through the corporate offices open. It's just like, yes, it's so good and so satirical and perfect. And, go home at 5:30, but only if you're done with your work. All of it's just so spot on. So it's a great satire in that way. The sadness for me is through the kind of the Jesse Plemons character, his cousin. You get the impression that he was maybe sexually abused as a kid.
Definitely.
His mom was an opioid addict who like died in a drug trial or went to a coma. His cousin is like autistic or whatever, and is kind of like the only friend he has in the world who's looking up to him, but he's also kind of abusing him. He's injecting him with chemical castration drugs. So it's a very dark world that this movie takes place in, that also feels all too real, because in America, in so many parts of this country, people are in a really bad state, economically, culturally, hollowed out. This obviously takes place in the Midwest somewhere. It feels kind of like
they filmed it in Georgia, actually. That's
okay,
Atlanta area. Yep.
But it has that kind of like general Midwestern, middle America feel, which I think is all very intentional, and I think the movie's exploring when individuals are beaten down to that level, and then you hand them the internet and you hand them like you're trying to find answers. Why is life this way? I mean, so much of what Teddy's pursuing in this film is like an explanation for why it's so bad. Like, why did all the bad things happen? And so many conspiracy theories and rabbit holes on the internet are about explaining why the bad things happen. And, the kind of joke of this movie is that he's 100% right. Like, he went down all the rabbit holes and he found the correct one, which is that there's a spaceship from Andromeda that came here and they're ruining everything. And I just think, it's brilliant, but it's also, that's where it made me kind of sick to my stomach, because it also felt so real and so of the moment.
Quickly, I mentioned a moment ago that the movie at no point suggests that there's another way. And it actually does in the dinner table scene where she's like, oh,
Mhm.
you're an activist. And he's like, no, I'm not an activist because I tried to be an activist and I tried this movement and this thing and that
Right.
thing. And actually, activism is part of the problem. So I decided to be this instead. And it's so dismissive of every other road to take or like every other hope that we could pursue. Again, just there's not a great view of humanity in this movie.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say was that like you have, as you guys have already touched on, like we have these two extremes, which is we have like the incelist of incels, and then we have like just kind of a heartless CEO. And then we have like two other characters in the entire movie, neither of whom is just like a sort of everyman. Don is the closest we have to that, but and then of course the way that everyone's being manipulated. Anyone can be manipulated by what they hear and what they see. But I had, there's that midpoint dinner scene, and I had my just sort of like character morality glasses on watching Emma Stone. Assuming, of course, she's not an alien because the movie wants you to assume that the first time you watch it, because otherwise it's a lot more fun if you assume she's not to the first time through. But then just basically assuming like she is a generally not necessarily good person, but generally kind of like fine person. I forget when the flashback where I think it's after the midpoint, the flashback of her being like, hey, like we're gonna take care of your family.
This one's on
It's all
us.
good. This
Yeah.
one's on us.
I love the corporate
but I'm pretty
speak.
sure that's after
So
the
good.
dinner scene.
Yeah.
And you think I didn't watch the movie 2 hours ago. But like it was the moment where he runs over the table in that incredible like
Amazing.
yeah. And she says something like, I'm a winner and you're a loser, and that's just the way it is. Deal with it, right? And that's when I went,
Mhm.
oh, okay, she is maybe a terrible person, right? Like even like may have been suggested, but now it's kind of clear. Where then I'm going, okay, so like nobody is redeemable, and that's almost like a sinking feeling moment where you're like, there is no redeemable. I'm not rooting for anybody anymore. I guess I'm rooting for Dawn if I have to root for anybody, But at the same time, that can also be fun because then you're like, okay, cool. Now I'm just watching these like horrible people go at it, and like I don't know what I want to happen or what's going to happen. But the movie also just has so much momentum that I don't have to worry about the fact. I don't have to care if I'm rooting for anybody or not. I can just have a good time. But I did find that was like an interesting choice to give her that moment during the midpoint where like a lot of things turn for the movie to say like, yeah, we're not. You don't need to be rooting for her. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I think it's a really important scene, and I want to come back to it. But first, I think I'm trying to figure out why this movie didn't feel dark to me, and I think part of it is the tone. Like, obviously, yes, all the things that you guys are saying are in there, but I think this movie uses absurdity in a way that, like to me, the way that whole finale is shot, where you're seeing all the people and they're all dead, and it's just like cut to like stationary shots. It's funny, like it's horrifying, but it's funny. And I think to me, the fact that I'm laughing at like the absurdity of it while also understanding the implications kind of gives me hope that like I can go through this movie and like, oh, this is like an absurd thing. Like this isn't like what's really going to happen, or like this isn't what really humans are about. And I feel like that's sort of throughout a feeling that I got. Like it both showed the darkness of the truth, but like made me be like, and that's like silly, that's stupid, that's not really how like who we really are. So I don't know, maybe this was just a very like specific window through which I was watching it, but I feel like the way this movie holds things and holds people like Teddy, like sort of without judgment, and then the fact that like Teddy is correct at the end, like the absurdity of that, like I think that is to me such a more interesting, like nuanced, like stop and consider all of this audience way to do things than without that ending. And I think that's also where I was starting to realize around where you were saying, Trisha, and maybe even earlier, maybe at midpoint. So I do want to go back to that like, oh, I think she must be an alien because that's kind of the only way there's like a third, like a deeper level to this thing that's being interrogated here.
Well, and I think setting aside the entire ending epilogue, if we want to call it that for now, I do think that the movie is really masterful at making you examine your empathy, or kind of pushing and pulling you and your sympathy and your empathies and where you relate to the characters. And, Brian, you were saying like, oh, these are terrible people and I don't really care which one will win. But there is something about the construction that's really effective in creating empathy for both of them, right? Like
Mhm.
the opening sort of 10 minutes where we meet, I guess her name is Michelle Fuller, Emma Stone's character. Not that it's ever mentioned or important.
Right.
But where we meet that character in
We meet
like
it.
yes, the Andromedan Emperor. We meet her in basically the most soulless way possible, right? We see her like her personal training regimen and her house and the like glass corporate structure that she lives in. And all of the trappings of wealth and success and her on the cover of all the magazines and all this stuff. And so she feels, like we hear the empty corporate speak and the double talk of how she's subtly threatening everyone that they can't leave at 5:30, but while insisting that they can. It's all like, a delight to watch the satire of that side. So, we're set up to hate her, right? And meanwhile, we're seeing Teddy and Dawn, and they have this relationship that's kind of beautiful, and we see that they care about each other, and they live in this house that's kind of homey, even if it is run down. And like, there are these things that kind of create empathy for them, right? I was not at all. I should mention I didn't watch the trailer. I've had very little idea what this was going to be about whatsoever. And
That's awesome.
Like, yeah, that's great.
it was a fantastic experience, but I really didn't believe at first that they had any desire to be violent, right? We spend a decent amount of time with Teddy and Dawn, and Dawn being like, we're not going to hurt her and all this stuff. And even when they get dressed, like even after they snatch her and they like get dressed in their suits, and he's like, we're trying to be the like reasonable, we're moral people, we have no desire for violence, we're going to try to treat you in accordance with the humane
Geneva Convention.
Yeah, so funny. Anyway, I had no idea how violent it was going to get, but the movie is this like sliding scale of empathy and where you're resonating with different people, even within the same scene, where you're like, oh, she's a human being, and oh, she actually feels sad or scared or whatever, and then like they're over here, they were harmed or injured, or they had this parent figure and this stuff that was lost and taken from it keeps doing this so well and like subtly, where line by line almost in the dialogue you're swaying back and forth between where your empathy lies. And so I think that's what, if I truly said, oh, these are two terrible people, I don't care where this goes, I don't think this would be a compelling movie. I
You'd
think
be watching Marty
Yeah.
Supreme.
Yeah.
See our Marty Supreme episode. But I think I desperately cared about both of these people and where it was in all three of these people, Dawn, and where it was going to go. And I really, I was super invested in not just like the journey of both characters necessarily, but the pressure cooker that they were in, seeing what parts of their personality would pop out when the pressure got more and more and more extreme. And it's a masterclass to study for that reason.
You're talking about, on a scene by scene, this is a stage play kind of movie. This
Absolutely.
movie is very contained. A lot of it's in the basement with just two people talking, a third person sometimes talking. And those scenes are so compelling because there's so much at stake for the characters. For the Michelle Fuller, the CEO, Andromedon Emperor, she is trying to navigate her way out of this with somebody who's seeming unstable. She's trying to like sort out, what does he believe? What is he actually thinking about all of this? And so she's trying different tactics to get through to him. And, there's the threatening, very matter-of-factly of like, here's the series of events that will happen. Like there will be a statewide manhunt and then different approaches after that when that doesn't work. And then for Teddy, what's at stake is he's invested so deeply in this reality. I mean, he's murdered people, taken them apart to see if they have like the Andromedon earlobes. And so he's gone so far down this path that for her to ever question or kind of, insist to him that he's wrong, he's mentally ill, this is not reality, that's where he lashes out. That's where he gets violent because he's just invested so deeply in this. This has to be all for something. And so all those scenes are just so taut because there's so much at stake and the goals are opposite. Her goal is to convince him she's not an alien, you got to let me go. His goal is you have to be an alien or else what did I do all this for? And that's just great scene writing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real quick, going back to what you were saying, Michael, about the sort of absurdity of it all, I was thinking, I think it was like listening to Conan O'Brien's podcast, and he was talking about his kind of approach to comedy, which is like, or even like to like teasing someone or whatever, which is like if you tease someone a little bit, it can come across as like mean, but if you tease them a lot, it's like very clearly, if you're just like, you're the worst person I've ever met in my entire life, it's like, well, clearly I'm being silly and absurd, right? But if you say something that's like a little bit, then it's like easy to read that either way and be like, is that what they really think of me? Like, is that true? And I feel like that's what absurdist theater and cinema is just sort of the like, at no point am I thinking, well, the people who wrote and the original movie and this movie and directed this movie, they think that the entire world is represented in these 4 characters and we should all die. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not that at all. It's exactly what you're saying, Michael, which is like, yes, this movie in a vacuum is dark, but in the greater sense of like, I don't actually think that this movie is a commentary on like, this is the literal entirety of the world that we are living in, and this is what these people think about it. Whereas some movies I have felt that way, that feel just very dark and they feel very like pessimistic. Like this movie doesn't feel pessimistic because it doesn't feel real, like you were saying, Michael. It feels like it is an allegory and it is a conversation, it is an idea, and it is not a statement.
Interesting, because I do think it does feel real in the ways that I've been talking about as far as just the times we're living in. But I agree that Yorgos brings that absurdist, satirical. He's kind of winking at you. He's having a good time with it, and that does bring almost a sense of like joy to the otherwise kind of grimy things we're dealing with in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's this winking and laughing and having like fun with it. And I agree with you, Michael, that I find that montage at the end of the bodies not to be the darkest thing in the movie. I think Teddy's sad life is darker to me than that because there is a bit of a kind of absurdist quality to the way the bodies are draped over things. There's a dog licking somebody's hand, and there is kind of a playfulness about it all. That is that Yorgos like special sauce, which is he's playful and winking and laughing at the same time as like showing you very dark things, and that's like kind of the beauty of his movies.
And that's what I mean in the sense that like you're not playful and winking if you think that like what your movie is saying is what you are actually saying about all of humanity, essentially.
Or you use the absurdity to kind of get at the absurdity of reality. And
yes, that's different.
I think
that's
you can
different
read
for being pessimistic in the way that I'm talking about.
I'm okay
like,
with
there's
this movie
no value of any of anything. Like,
I'm okay with the movie being super pessimistic, and I think
it doesn't feel pessimistic to me at all, though.
Right,
like that's what's so funny to me. Like I agreed that there are really distinct, well observed, accurate portrayals of our reality. I think that's different than but they're not portrayed in a way that's like, isn't this awful? Like, look at how like monotone, gray, sad music. Like, reality is portrayed as reality. And I know what reality is, and so I'm like, okay, that's reality. And then there are these exaggerated elements that are like, twisting the way I'm thinking about reality and kind of, bending my vision back to see it from another angle. But I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's constructed to me to highlight how awful I should feel about everything. I feel like it's constructed to be like, this is the way it is. I'm going to show you this is reality, and then having these absurd elements that then kind of draw your brain to think about it this way or see it from this other like standpoint. And so I think it's just,
it maybe just reflects how depressed we are personally right now about reality. Maybe that's what we're actually.
Well, yeah, I think
talking
this
about.
is lots of people bring their own things to a movie like this.
Okay. At the risk of saying something very obvious, just want to call out some of my sensitivity toward this movie, which is that I'm a parent, and any images of dead children are not something that I'm going to just breeze by and will never find funny, ever. Now, other parents may vary, I guess. Lots of people in this world are parents and probably find the ending laughable. I don't happen to find it laughable. I can't look at dead kids and laugh. It's not a thing that I can do. Saying that straight out. Another thing that I have trouble with is I'm a woman. And even though this movie goes to painstaking lengths to emphasize that there is no sexual gratification that Jesse Plemons' character or Dawn are getting out of trapping a woman in their basement, women still get abducted and held in basements too often. A shocking amount, actually, and are otherwise abused by male perpetrators. And so it's a dynamic that is just inherent because of the world that we live in that is not able to be separated from the experience of watching the movie for me. That being said, I agree that there are very to exactly what you're saying, Michael, there is an absurdist lens on this movie that wants to make sure that you understand that this is a game, for lack of a better word, or I guess a story, right? I think that the color is really interesting. It's really brightly colored and the music is so operatic and huge and I love it. Like, I love the score. I read that Yorgos Lanthimos did not give the composer any script or any notion of what it was about, but just told him to write a score based on the words bees, basement, and
spaceship. Emily Bald. Emily Bald.
And what you have is the score, and it's awesome, right? It's an unconventional way to approach it. But again, it's big. The score is absurdist. The look of the movie is absurdist. The performances, like the entire premise. And I think that what it's doing very well and very effectively is like focusing on the fact that these two extremist points of view that are at war in most of the dialogue in this movie are arguing about the nature of reality itself, right? Because that's really what is happening on the internet these days. We are being fed two different versions, or really several different versions of reality on the internet. And what you have are people outraged and making decisions that impact their lives and ours and the planet and society and culture, all based on this like perception of reality that is pretty arbitrary. Or rather, it's just they're arguing about what is real and what is not real, and the sides absolutely cannot agree and will not see it the same way. They essentially are living in two different realities, right? Jesse Plemons' character Teddy happens to be tapped into most of what is real, but he doesn't actually know that, right? His conspiracy theory bubble is built it's very fragile and it's poppable. As the bubble is at the end of this movie that Emma Stone pops on the flat earth and
Yep.
destroys all human life. And so I think that it is calling this argument absurd, but it is a real argument that is shaping our everyday lives about the nature of reality and the way that, people on different sides of the political, social, cultural spectrum all over the world are seeing what's happening right now. And that also is exhausting. I mean, like, it's exhausting to me. Like, I live in this world. I have to live here. I don't know if I want that. It's shown to me so clearly. This is such a clear-eyed mirror of what it's like to be alive right now. And yikes, is my feeling.
And what I do love about the Teddy character is that the movie has so much fun with the fact that he's completely right. So it's both. Once again, the normal version of this movie would be the sad character study of the guy who's so deluded he's gone down this path of a completely fictional reality, but he's correct. But then the movie's also saying, but this guy's not like healthy. Like, he doesn't look
Right.
good.
No.
This is not a way to live. He kills his mother with antifreeze because he is so open and willing.
Alicia Silverstone.
to believe.
She's great in this, by the way.
Yeah, I love. Yeah, that was so cool to see her in this movie.
Yeah.
But to his mind is so open to answers, of a certain kind that he will just take them at face value and run with them. And so I love the complexity of it all, and I love the absurdity of it all. And it's so nice to have a movie like this that is engaging with our reality. I mean, this is what you're trying to get at, Michael, is just like, it is, but it's having fun with it, and it's letting it be kind of complicated and messy, and it's not that kind of on the nose, like, here's the bad person and here's the good person and here's the right way to live and here's the wrong way to live. It's letting it all be kind of messy and absurd, which is also kind of accurate, really, to reality.
Yeah, and I'll say just quickly to kind of put a pin on that is like that's what I mean in the sense of, like, we talked about, if a certain minority, if there's only one of them in the movie and that person is like really problematic or bad in some way, it raises the question, is this what the filmmaker thinks about that type of person, right? They may not, but they haven't given us evidence to the contrary. This movie has like 4 people in it, and they're like, none of them is great, like, so my point is, like, the filmmakers are not saying like everyone is either an incel or like a sweet person with autism or like a creepy cop or a horrible CEO / alien. Like, it's saying like this is it makes me think of like when a band makes a song that's very angry, or a band in general is very angry. It's like, that's not the band or the artist saying like, this is how I feel about the world. It is saying, this is me expressing a certain emotion, and like, you can like hang out with this emotion for 5 minutes and experience it. That doesn't mean by the end you just are an angry person for the rest of your life. It just means that it's like it's cathartic, right? It's a way to kind of like to express a feeling that we have. And that's what I mean by saying, like, a movie that is doing what this movie is doing is not saying this is my entire hypothesis about all of humanity.
Well, and I think what it does well in the design of its characters, and to kind of circle back to the midpoint and the escalation that it does, is that these are very specific characters, and it's getting at that universal thing through like the specificity of these characters and how like rendered they are, and they are different. As you're saying, Brian, they represent these different kind of perspectives, but are all tied up in the same thing. And I think it does a really good job with the control of information. And so, and I think what's crazy is like the performances are where so much of the information lies, is like the insight into like how much, how bought in is Teddy to this? Like, is he like just trying to convince himself of this because he knows the truth is something else, or is he like totally bought in? Obviously, Emma Stone, the whole time you're sort of like trying to read, like, you're seeing her switch tactics and try to like appraise the situation, and like, I'm trying to learn about you and adjust my tactics. And I feel like the movie just like scene by scene ratchets up everything. So like we're saying earlier, when they first have kidnapped her, they come down, they're dressed properly, but there's a tension. Something bad's going to happen. And so in my head, it was like, how violent is this going to get? Like, is this a movie in which they're going to like physically harm her? And for a while, it's sort of dancing around that, and then it reaches a boiling point, and he slaps her, right? And so it's like, okay, well, so now that's on the table. What else is on the table? And it's kind of this
Jesse Plemons eventually.
and Jesse Plemons to get back to the midpoint. And that's one of the aspects that is horrifying and is like suspenseful and tense, is like, how bad is this going to get? How much
well, he like electrocutes her.
And it gets to that point. Right. No, exactly. And so I think, but the movie does a really good job of doling out all of that, of like saying, here's our new baseline. How bad's it going to get? How bad's it going to get? It got that bad. Okay, here's our new baseline. And it's doing that with the different characters, with the different relationships, right? Like we were talking about Don, that's his name, right? The brother? Yeah. So like there was a period of time in which I'm like, okay, maybe he's going to be able to get out of this okay. And then things get to a certain level and it's like, it's not going to be okay. How bad is it going to get? Oh, it's going to get really bad, right? And I feel like the movie, in its structure and in its escalation, just does a really good job of pacing all of that out so that you're always tense. You always have a little bit of hope, and you're always wondering what's going to happen next, and maybe there's a way out. And it just continues to that and continues to that. And then I think kind of finally breaks it with the scene that you mentioned, Trisha, where finally the Emma Stone character is free, sees the door up, doesn't go, goes digging elsewhere. And so now it's like, oh, something else is happening now. Like we've swapped dramatic questions almost in a way. And so I just want to call that out, that I think that escalation builds and ties into the moral back and forth that you guys were talking about, that does kind of, in that midpoint scene, like you were saying, Brian, really come out. We're like, oh, we're now seeing her engaged in this moral conversation, and she's taking like a stance. She's no longer like, she's not trying to be too like, oh yeah, you're totally right. She believes something too. So she represents things, Annie represents things, and they are still in tension despite this situation.
And I just want to underline there how hard it is to do what you're talking about, because the circumstances don't materially change much in the movie, right? We're not changing locations. We are not changing characters in the scene. And so making sure that scenes are still scenes in a way that we've discussed a lot on this podcast, where something is different by the end of that scene, is really hard to do in a stage play kind of way. And this movie is great at it, where it feels like the scene begins, they're speaking in the basement, and Emma Stone's character is trying a tactic. And we know what the goal is, right? The goal doesn't change for pretty much the whole movie. We know what the goal is, but the tactic is she's going to try a tactic until it absolutely like doesn't work. But she's going to try it and try it and try it. And then that's going to cause either a reveal of weakness on the part of the Teddy or Dawn characters, or it's going to cause an escalation. And it's really worth studying. It's really well done in both the different varieties of tactics that she uses, and they're fun for an actor to play. But also, like, just seeing how the scenes are built within themselves, the back and forth between the personalities, the tactics, and then, the cutoff at what point something is different. Characters, even though they don't really walk in and out of scenes so much, and they don't really there's usually not a change in actual circumstances until that midpoint sequence, but they never walk in out of the scene the same person they walked in.
Right.
And that's so impressive in a movie like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the nice thing, part of the construction of, this movie doing two things at once, but they're always in parallel with each other. You know, whether it's bees or humans, like there's always kind of a whichever version of events you're living on. There's something in either parallel. Is Emma Stone the human CEO and Emma Stone the alien empress? They would use the same tactic to
Right.
in any given scene, right? Especially because Emma Stone the alien doesn't want to make it clear that she's an alien. Like, obviously there's a version where in the first scene she says, okay, you got me, and then she like does whatever he wants, and then you don't have a movie, right? But also then she is risking, like, the empress is like risking lots of potential issues, right, by admitting what's going on. So again, it's not a movie you watch a second time and go, well, she's an alien, then she wouldn't do this, or she wouldn't. It's like, no, of course she would. She would do I'm going to be like, hello, I'm an alien, and I would like to have a nice day, goodbye, whatever. Like she would do those. She would do whatever the human CEO would do if she were in this situation, right? And that's why it works so beautifully both ways.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you cast Emma Stone, one of the best actresses of our time, to play like, I am an alien, but I have to act like a CEO. But a CEO would be like, okay, sure, I'm an alien. Like, has to like act all of those levels.
Yeah.
And like, of course, Emma Stone can do it.
And
I love the calculator at the end.
Yes.
This is a calculator. I swear it had to look innocuous and like a normal thing to have on a desk. Anyway, it has a 54-digit code. It's so awesome.
But it's also like in a box. So like
I know.
everything is perfectly calibrated, where it's like, it's weird to have the calculator in a special box, but also it's the perfect like fake out tool if you're pretending to like buy time for the security guards to come. So it's also perft.
And the fact that she can pull off the ears, like, is really good acting. No, I Michael, back in maybe the favorite episode, I don't remember when, you were like, I feel like Emma Stone's our new Meryl Streep. And we were all like, careful, buddy. Like, and honestly, now 5 years later, I'm like, hell yeah, like 100%. Like, I was thinking in our episode about acting, I sort of said that there are these two kind of extremes of acting, where you have the Dustin Hoffman or the Gary Oldman, like someone who's going to like completely melt and disappear into a performance where you're like, that was them. Like, I had no idea that, very character actory, very, I'm going to do this makeup and I'm going to have a fake nose and whatever. And then you have the like De Niro's and the Nicholsons who are just going to be like, I'm just really good at being me, and Harrison Ford or whatever, where it's just like, I'm going to be a commanding presence and I'm going to be impressive. I'm also a good actor, but like, I'm not going to be like this other person, right? And then I feel like there's this like final boss of Meryl Streep and Emma Stone and a few other people who they don't really do a lot of character. They can do it, but most of their roles are not like, here's my weird accent and my way of talking and I'm gonna da da da. They're just versions of themselves, but at the same time they can do anything. Like whatever role you put them in, I completely believe it, even though they're doing like the what's the word I'm looking for? The characteristics, the mannerisms, they're not that different from the last four roles they played, because they don't have to be. Right? They don't have to be like, well, if I'm going to play this person, I better walk with a limp or whatever. It's just like, I'm going to be myself in the truest way possible that just works so well for whatever this character is. And like, I do feel like Emma Stone has become, she's also like that now at her age, nobody ever has been nominated for as many acting nominations as of this coming Oscars. The only person ever who's been nominated for that many Oscars at her age was Walt Disney, which like doesn't count. So yeah, like it's impressive, and I feel it's earned, and just hell yeah.
Jesse Plemons too. I just want to.
Is amazing.
Robbed, snubbed at the Oscars.
Awful. Like, I can't.
Snubbed.
He's amazing in this.
He's amazing in this.
I feel like he is totally transformed in this role, and not just because of how he looks, although his whole look is kind of amazing in this. Like, I totally buy
like
that,
hot and gross at the same time.
I totally buy that he's this hippie, like, extreme environmentalist kind of, but like conspiracy theorist, incel, like he kind of is, he's really, really good. And I want to say too, when it comes to tension and stakes, that his role does not work unless you think that she might be able to crack him. There has to be, if I believed from the outset that he would never, ever, ever give in, then it just wouldn't be fun to watch, right? Like, but it is so compelling to watch him because her tactics are so convincing, and there's he's playing like these chinks in his armor where I think that she might be able to get in there. And so I'm always watching him carefully because I'm like, this might be working. She might be getting through. It might be happening. Or like, even if she isn't getting through to him per se in terms of what she's saying about reality, she is changing him, right? He is not like an unchangeable thing. He is very vulnerable. And watching a character with vulnerabilities is always more interesting than watching one without them. He's so good in this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely.
And then we'll throw in Aidan Delbus, who is
100%.
Dawn, who just
So
like
good.
Yeah.
what a beautiful like looking person and feeling person, and I just buy him so much, and he is the heart and soul of this movie. My partner and I saw this in the theater, and like I heard her kind of like gasp every time he said anything almost. He's just like, I just feel sad and weird or whatever. And I just heard her just like emote, vocally. And I was just like, yeah, like that. This movie is a very different feeling movie if you don't have the Don character.
Very much.
When he expresses like so earnestly that his desire is to go to space, just to like leave this world. It's so kind of profound and sad and beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. The performance is great. And then also just that the writing on the page also of like this character who doesn't have like kind of their whole thing is like speaking is not easy, doesn't have a whole lot of lines, doesn't have a whole lot of words. And so the words that do come out carry so much meaning.
Yeah.
And so to be like so sparse,
Right.
but like to have it be those impactful words and perform. Yeah. This movie doesn't work without that character.
Yeah.
For sure. Why don't we go around and say what lessons we're going to take away? And Trisha, what you were talking about with the Teddy character and his vulnerabilities is sort of what I was thinking about, and kind of my lesson is that the scenes around the kind of focal point scenes, like there's sort of a cadence, right, that happens of once she's been kidnapped and she's down there. It's sort of like, all right, there's going to be an interrogation scene, and we're going to see how these two foes handle each other. It goes back and forth, and then everyone leaves the scene changed. And then there's kind of a couple scenes in between those, and then there's going to be another confrontation scene. And so we sort of have that pattern. And the scenes around those interrogation scenes are really important because they give us the state of mind of those characters and start to point at, like you were saying, Trisha, their vulnerabilities and their weaknesses. So like there's time spent even in the prep before they kidnap her, of just like how much psyching themselves up they have to do. And it's a lot of the Teddy character trying to psych up Dawn and convince him, but we're seeing in the performance like Teddy is scared too. Like, chemical castration doesn't seem fun, but like I'm in telling you, I am, reassuring myself, right? And I feel like there's lots of moments like that where like doubt is introduced, and then he kind of, externalizes it or denies it or puts it on somebody else or says like, you don't need to worry about that. But every time we're doing it, it's showing us that doubt and those cracks that are to make him vulnerable. And I feel like we get less of that kind of textual stuff for Emma Stone's character, the Michelle Fuller character. But I think, again, in the performance and in the setup, we do see imperfections that can be exploited. And I think it's fun when Teddy like calls her on that, right? Like there's a scene where she's like, you've gone down a rabbit hole, you're in a bubble on the internet and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, wow, really? Like some op-ed that's what you're using to me. Like we all read that, like whatever, like those, it's fun to see her fit. Like it's fun to see both of them fail. And so I think it's as we've been saying, a great thing to study for very clear character goals directly in opposition. And then what kinds of setups do you need to understand that, like, in this interrogation scene, Teddy's doing a little bit of a performance, or Michelle's doing a little bit of a performance to try to get this thing. And it's when we know how they really feel and that there's a performance that then there's like, but what's going to happen in between? Is there going to be a break or a crack? And this movie's, yeah, I'm very excited to watch it again. I hope the screenplay is released if it's not already, because I'd love to like see it on the page and see how that's all written. But super, super good. Brian, what's your lesson?
Yeah, you guys touched on already, but it's the stage play element of this, which is, this movie feels there are plenty of movies that are, set in a contained area, but like this movie feels huge and epic, because of, as we said, the score is a big part of it, the editing, the directing, the performances, obviously just like the stakes and everything, but it's like you could, outside of the last 20 minutes, like you could really just do a play of this and it would be fascinating and exciting. And, a lot of plays are just like someone came home from college and they've got issues or whatever. And it's like you could do something that feels like this, like insane and broad and whatever. And you don't have to change that much to really get everything that's here. And as you said, Alex, a lot of it is because, I just mentioned a lot of the surface stuff, the directing, the music and everything. Surface isn't the right word, but like almost the cosmetic stuff. But Alex, as you said, just the stakes and everything, the gold, like everything is so big and not only absurd, but also just like intense and meaningful and the craziest thing that is happening to every character at every moment, right? Like the biggest thing that could ever happen to them. And it almost feels the opposite of what we talked about. We talked about Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, which is just like a lot of the dialogue is just like Tom Cruise is going to stand in a room against the 17th character you've met this movie and just be like, hey, you told me I could have 48 hours, but I need 60. And they're like, okay, but not a second over 60. And he's like, great, I'm going to go run now. You know what I mean? It's just like, the scenes are like so hollow and nothing. And you don't even understand what they mean half the time. Like what was just decided? Like, what does that actually mean? And because there's not even a lot of blocking in this movie. If you think about it, it's not even just like we're in a house. It's like we're in a house and Emma Stone's going to be like tied to a bed, or a chair or whatever. And like even the people who are free to move are going to stand in one place and talk. And this scene is going to be 8 minutes long. And it is the most riveting thing you've seen until a few minutes later when the next scene happens. And yeah, just great. I feel like I don't care what kind of movie you're trying to make, just try to do that. try to make it so that just the words that people say to each other feel as impactful and as exciting and as compelling as possible. And I feel like that should be incredibly true in a Mission Impossible type movie. But even it feels really, really true for obviously this movie is not like a quiet drama, but like movies that are just people in rooms talking, it feels like the dialogue especially has to be this, I don't know, exciting, compelling, thrilling, whatever. Different stories are going to allow for different types of dialogue, but obviously making a story like this allows for just something that just feels like a really fun ride, even when all we're doing is just watching two actors' faces.
Yeah. There's been in our monthly film club chats with patrons a thing I've been paying attention to, a running gag or idea basically of like a new Mission Impossible series and who should be involved, and like Kaylee Spaney's been brought up, and I'm like, I want to see Kaylee Spaney Mission Impossible stuff. Kaylee Spaney and a Yorgos Lanthimos Mission Impossible. I don't know if it's good, but I would watch it.
A Yorgos Lanthimos Mission Impossible.
Also, Ari Aster produced this movie, Bugonia. So it's just like there's a whole like all
That tracks.
the insane people are coming together and
Love it.
Of course. But yes,
Right.
stakes, world. The world is at stake for these characters. And in this case, it's literal, but kind of always we should feel like the stakes are that big to
Right.
the characters. And it just happens to be actually true in this one. Trisha.
Brian's lesson is kind of related to mine. So I'm going to jump in here, which is I mentioned at the top that this is not really a character study. And I want to sort of clarify what I mean by that, as well as argue against a negative review that I read of this movie. Who I can't remember the reviewer, so I apologize. I don't know who I'm arguing with. The internet, aptly enough.
Apropos.
Yeah, the review that I read said that this movie, the characters lack development, basically. Alex's face is correct. Alex went, ugh. But I thought that was a wild thing to say. And as someone who often complains about a lack of character development or like a lack of backstory for characters, I kind of want to just clarify what I mean. So something I've said before to you guys and maybe on mic once or twice, which is that characters really are ideas in drama. I feel like lay people often tend to think, and we can fall into the trap of it too, thinking of characters as actual human people, which they are not. And so like you'll see these people arguing on the internet about like, well, no one would carry that gun into that battle because of this reason. Like, no, none of that matters. Like, this is not a human being. Stop, let all of this go. Or, they're yelling about like, well, this happened to that character in childhood, so they feel this way and blah, blah, blah. No, none of that. Let that all go. There is nothing to a character beyond what is actually in the text of something. And then there's a human actor that's embodying them, which I understand how when you look at somebody, especially like Emma Stone or Jesse Plemons in this movie, how you might think that's a person. But no, my friend, you are still wrong. That is not a person. And it's not that they're Andromedons either. It's that they're ideas. It's that they're ideas. And ideas require only as much development as to make them believable as people, if that makes sense. You have to dress an idea in human skin well enough that it can be played by a human. But really, it needs to remain at its heart an idea. And I think that we've identified these things around Teddy as, his mother was an opioid addict who participated in this trial that was supposed to get her off of opioids, but actually had far, far worse consequences. He has this cousin who is dependent on him in some ways. And obviously they live in a rural area, right? They're far outside of town. There are these things that are, and not to mention then we get to he was sexually abused by someone trusting, that he trusted in his life, his babysitter, who then became a cop.
Right.
So those backstory elements, first of all, do constitute character development. But what they're really doing are creating the clothes for this idea to wear, believably. And it's a really, really sharp movie to study because we have even less of a backstory for Emma Stone's character, right? There's a moment where Teddy like lists off like you came from here and there and you went to this school and it was a university which is privilege laundering, I think he calls it. But he kind of lists off these things about her as a character, Michelle Fuller as a character. But really, it's only doing as much as it needs to do to make the idea believable, explorable. And I think that is character development. And I often complain about not knowing backstory for character, but what I mean is I care when ideas don't believably inhabit humans. Really, that's what bothers me. And what I actually prefer is something like this, where there's enough there's enough development where I'm not worried like, oh, this isn't believable. But the idea itself is explorable. The idea itself is interesting. And then the entire plot work of the movie spends its runtime bashing these two ideas up against each other and letting the drama arise out of that. And that's just good dramatic writing because it's drama. If you put two actual human people in a basement and had them talk to each other, it might get interesting actually if one of them was chained up, but like it probably actually wouldn't. It probably would be boring, right?
Pretty boring for a pretty long
and
time.
really just depressing and sad and not interesting or fun or any of the things that we've talked about. These are ideas. And I think that the movie is great at developing them just enough, but then also letting the plot dig into them. This is a thematic study, an idea study, and a character study as sort of a product of that, I suppose, but only because it's so thematically sharp.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the other thing that backstory can do is it complicates the idea, right? It can add a wrinkle or a new perspective on it that, again, enriches that and informs like the power of the human wearing the idea or the idea wearing the human. So like when we learn that this old babysitter who is now a cop, in a very subtle, I mean not subtle, but a simple kind of throwaway, you have to like read between the lines, but it's very clear what's between those lines. When you learn that that's part of Teddy's history that plugs into what we know about him, and for me anyway, is like, oh, this shows me how deep this motivation is and how long he's had to like fight or been build up. So like that informs what I think he's capable of and what could happen to him as a character. If that police officer instead said, you know how your favorite color was green when you were 5? That does nothing. That doesn't help.
Right.
That doesn't inform anything whatsoever. So it's not like, I just need more random things. It's as you're saying, things that inform and complicate and empower and amplify the ideas in these characters.
Yes. Thank you. Very well said. I appreciate that.
And just to piggyback on that, it's so targeted because you're talking about an authority figure, somebody who is supposed to be in charge, betraying you in that deep way. Yeah, you're not going to trust authority the rest of your life, So it's a perfect trauma for this idea, the idea of someone who goes down the rabbit holes, the conspiracy theories, and yeah, so that's I think we're talking about people who say like, oh yeah, they need more backstory. The thing not to do is just to make up random things for a backstory, because as Trisha's pointing out, these are not actual people. People do have a bunch of random stuff in their backstory. These are ideas, and so everything in their backstory is serving that idea and enriching that idea.
Yes.
Yeah. Alex, what's your lesson?
I just want to highlight again how brilliant it is to write a character like the Michelle Fuller character, where even like the ambulance moment where she gets out of the ambulance is where it fully confirms the reality. Well, first of all, I want to say I love that this movie just confirms the reality that she is an alien. There's no, oh, maybe this is in Teddy's head at this point. No, he's dead. He's out of the picture. We're fully like with Emma Stone now, and she's an alien. I love that.
I love that she gets hit in the head with his head.
With his head.
Yeah.
Again, the absurdity on this.
Yeah.
They've been butting heads the whole movie.
Hey.
I also just love the casual way he like unzips the vest to reveal the explosives. Like I gotta have a backup plan in case you know. And she's like, oh dear God.
I was gonna say, like, I just realized that's like a Jesse Plemons thing. That's Creepy Todd in Breaking Bad. That's his character in Civil War. It's just the character is gonna say the most insane thing he's ever said while like scratching his eye, or you know what I mean?
Right.
Like while doing something like so innocuous.
What kind of Star Wars fan are you?
Yeah.
Meme.
Anyway, so one, I love the movie commits to the idea that she's an alien, doesn't try to have it both ways. But I love that also it does the audience, it allows me as a viewer to do my own 2+2 in every single scene of the movie. So even at the point where I was pretty sure she was an alien, where he comes back after killing his mom with antifreeze. And she's just standing there with a kind of a new posture and a new authority. And she says, how many Andromedons did you kill? Like, how many?
It's an angle we've never seen
Yeah.
before. Like, it's a whole,
So it's very clear that there's a shift, and the authority she has speaking about the history of the dinosaurs being infected with the virus, like, which I just love all of that, because that's exactly just the batshit crazy, like, internet like idea that you'd have. Anyway. Even then, I was doing a 2 + 2 in my head of, oh, but wait a minute. She was looking through notebooks. She was looking through notebooks in that room. We saw text and scribbles. She's a brilliant psychopath CEO. Maybe she realized the way to get that door unlocked up there is to just go all in and like use the information I learned to like tell a story that will get me back to my office, to then the security guards will come get me while I'm doing the calculator.
Confirm enough details that he believes it, but be like, but you're wrong about this, but you're wrong about that. Yeah.
But it's just like, that's my favorite kind of writing, when you can design a character and present it to an audience in exactly the right bandwidth, where I can do that 2 + 2 in either direction, and it's totally valid and can be totally read either way, and it makes sense. And that's really impressive, and I love movies that have twists when they can pull that off. And so I think it's worth studying this as an example of that, of just giving the audience exactly the right information at the right time, so they can do that 2 + 2 and kind of trick themselves. The movie's never overtly lying to you. It's just giving you enough pieces so you can assemble your own story with the information you have.
Yeah. Very impressive film. Really entertaining, thought-provoking, and makes me, I'm glad that the Yorgos train is one I continue to be happy to ride on, except for this one example where I just knew I shouldn't see it, but the rest of the time.
I mean, Emma and Yorgos, let's just keep it going. Let's just keep going.
And Jesse.
Also, but like Yorgos and Luca Guadagnino, like, slow down. You guys don't have to make like 1 to 2 movies a year. Like, just take I want to miss what you're doing. Take your time.
I don't think we called it the cinematography, or if we did, not enough. But this movie is beautiful also. And like the way it's shot.
Another VistaVision movie.
So good.
It's back, baby.
Yeah. What else have you guys been watching? Brian, what have you been watching recently?
Another of my favorite movies of 2025 is It Was Just an Accident. Which is nominated for the Oscar for International Feature, as well as a couple, I think, directing and script, maybe just script. And love this movie. Another great example of a slow drip of information, to the point where I don't even want to say what the plot of the movie is, because knowing nothing, the movie spends almost half the movie, maybe the first act, but I want to say maybe up to the midpoint, just kind of letting you figure things out as the movie decides it's time to reveal that thing, which means the first like 20 minutes are just this like tense, well, I don't know what the situation is here, but I can't wait to find out what it is. And that's just like the best. It's sort of like a drama / thriller, because it's always kind of keeping you on your toes, even though it is, like, again, largely a movie of people in rooms talking. And I talked recently-ish about the movie The Seed of the Sacred Fig, which was one of my favorite movies of, I think, 2023. And both these movies, not the same filmmaker, but both these movies were made by Iranian directors who are making movies about their own government and have to make these movies in hiding and through other countries' distribution. Like, It Was Just an Accident is a French movie, technically, and have both been in prison multiple times for making movies about the things that are actually happening. It's very like Arthur Miller writing The Crucible, like that kind of thing. But the thing that I love, I've only seen one of each of their movies, but the thing I loved about both of them is that they are very intimate character study movies that are just about some people who have relationships, and inevitably someone in this relationship is is sort of represents the government in some way, and how they react to them. And that is so much more engaging to me than like a big political drama where people are in offices talking about, can you believe this thing happened and this thing, whatever. And yeah, so I really applaud that style of filmmaking and that way of talking about the situation that you're currently in, like Bugonia does. And I am curious to see their other films and to see what they make next undercover. But highly recommend It Was Just an Accident.
Nice. Cool. All right. Trisha, what have you been watching?
Yeah, I decided to check out this mini series that was a PBS limited series back in 2020 called Atlantic Crossing. Someone recommended it to me because it's a historical drama about World War II, which is mostly what I want. But it's also connected to a future project of mine in a way that I can't really discuss, but I was really excited to see it. And it's excellent. It is about the Crown Princess of Norway during World War II, who came over here to the U.S. And ended up staying in the United States for pretty much the duration of the war with her children. Her husband, the Crown Prince of Norway, was mainly not here. He was in England with some of the Norwegian troops and all these things. But the princess ended up sort of becoming romantically entangled with FDR. And it's about their relationship and the repercussions, the political repercussions of their relationship. And so the Princess of Norway is played by an actress named Sophia Helen, who is very wonderful in this. And FDR is played by Kyle MacLachlan, which is the FDR casting you didn't know you needed. And he's great. That should go without saying. And it's just a really compelling drama. It's a really good example of like a lesser known historical event. Like, I feel like I know a lot about World War II and about presidents having affairs in office. But I didn't know about this one. And yeah, it's a really interesting story and this sort of weird situation this woman was in and how she was navigating it. But I really enjoyed it. So if you like historical dramas on PBS, which deserves your support, by the way, you can support PBS and check out Atlantic Crossing.
It's made
Very
possible
cool.
by viewers like you.
It is. It sure is, Brian.
Yes. Alex, what have you been watching?
So I finally jumped on the bandwagon and watched Heated Rivalry on HBO
Wow,
Max.
all
Heated Rivalry,
right.
baby. So yeah, I mean, if you haven't heard, I don't know where you've been, because it's this huge phenomenon. It's a small Canadian gay hockey show that women are loving in mass numbers, and gay men as well. But women, especially straight women, love Heated Rivalry. It is based on a romance novel series. You're watching it, it's like, yes, this is a romance novel. But I think beyond the gay hockey smut, it is also really heartwarming and like sweet, and have, masculine characters with emotion and tenderness and caring for each other. And so I think it actually is kind of like hitting a nerve right now, because in kind of our toxic masculinity world, you've got this little Canadian gay show about these jocks who are kind of needing to be in the closet but falling in love with each other and having these sweet, tender emotions with each other and vulnerabilities. And I think people are just like loving it, and it feels very cozy in a lot of ways. And it's not a kill your gays situation. It's like things are working out and it's nice and sweet. And so I binged it all in a weekend, and it was kind of like comfort food. I mean, at first it was like, whoa, this is hot. I mean, the first couple episodes are like heavy on the HBO sex. But as it goes on, it gets more and more kind of character focused, and it is just like, it's just sweet and nice. And it was just kind of a revelation of like, oh yeah, there's not that many like just sweet, nice gay romance stories. Usually there's something kind of darker going on, or it's like something traumatic has to happen. And I just think it's a really interesting phenomenon that there's so many people right now are just loving this. And so if you want some steamy hot people having sex, and also sweet male tenderness. Heated Rivalry is for you.
Nice.
I do. Thank you.
You should
Great
watch
job,
it.
Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. I agree. Like that. It shouldn't be that hard to check those boxes. You would
You
think
wouldn't think.
people would,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
And some gay jocks to
Yeah.
Mhm.
do the full picture of masculinity.
Yeah.
What are you watching, Michael?
Well, similar to you, Trisha, on
Oh.
PBS,
Hey.
Sesame Street.
which is also great. I've recently gone down a Ken Burns
Oh.
rabbit
Yeah.
hole, which is a great rabbit hole to go down.
Mhm.
And so I watched a couple months ago The American Revolution, which is his newest one, which is really, really great. And that kind of kicked this off. But then I watched the Vietnam War, the one that came out in 2017. That
Score
series,
by
I was just about to say Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, which is
Mhm.
admittedly a little distracting when in the
Mm.
first episode it's like we're hearing about, how the French colonized Vietnam, and then like the Social Network starts bumping and you're like, wait, what? Because a lot of the tracks are obviously very similar to what they became
right.
in the but it's really good. It's just like extremely good. I thought I knew a lot about the Vietnam War because, it's in culture a lot, it's in movies a lot. And so I thought I had like a decent kind of picture. And watching this, I realized, no, like the picture I had is pretty low resolution, actually. And if you zoom in, there's so much. And the kind of the breadth of the time that it takes place over is like a little bit bigger than I realized. And it does a great job of setting up, 100 years before it, what happened. And so I would say the first episode is the most, history, maybe hard, quote unquote, to get through. But it then becomes just extremely watchable. And so just on a formal level, it's really fascinating to see a documentary create subplots and like introduce characters that you're following throughout the arc of an episode. It creates this kind of weird feeling where I wanted to binge it because it was so entertaining, and yet the subject matter is so horrifying and depressing and all these things. But I really appreciate how he looks at it from all these different perspectives, and it does feel like just a really nice, clear-eyed view of this crazy time. And it's about the war, but it's also about America and what America went through, and about this like crazy time where the American government was just blatantly lying to the American people, and the president was like sacrificing global peace and stability to consolidate power.
Oh, okay.
And like
Okay.
federal troops were like opening fire on human civilians, and the country was so divided, people thought a civil war was going to happen and there would be no way to ever, reconcile it. And so it's interesting because none of that ever happened again. And so it's
Mhm.
interesting to just see that moment in time. Anyway, so it's really good. If it feels like probably one of the most important things like I've ever watched. And you get to support PBS while doing it. And
Yep.
it's extremely entertaining while also being educational and enlightening in many, many ways. So the Vietnam War on PBS.
Learn your history, everybody. Just go learn some history.
Just go learn some
It's
history.
good.
I
It's
feel
a
like
good thing to do.
it's become very clear recently that
Yep.
we need to know our history.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure do.
Would be good.
Yeah. Well, this has been our conversation about Bugonia.
Learn your history.
We want to say a big thank you, as always, to the patrons for making this show possible. If you want to help us make more episodes and check out our latest episode on Marty Supreme, head over to the Beyond Screenplay Patreon. I want to say thank you to our producer, Vince Major. I'm Michael Tucker. I'm joined today by Trisha Arand, Brian Bittner, and Alex Calleros, and we will see you in the next episode.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.